Hey everybody, how's it going? Grizz here. So what we're going to talk about this week is this project right here. So this was a existing piece I had. It was a mold I made a few years back. I used to have just a hole here cut out as a planter. Never was happy with it. It was just too small. I had made one for myself and planted. I think I've got one more back in storage. But it's a great piece, got lots of detail. It looks awesome. It was made from an old stump, pretty rotten. I had to do quite a bit of clay work on it to fill the ends and sides. But it's a cool piece. So what I've done is hollowed it out to make a big long succulent planter or whatever somebody wants to plant in their yard. So just going to tilt the camera up and we'll talk about how I went through this. So this is straight plaster of Paris. I'm just gonna move this camera up and then come into frame, I hope. How's that? Oh, cutting the top of my head off. Okay, yeah, see, because there's so much to see, the top of my head. Hope the shine isn't too bad. So, plaster of Paris. I've done videos in the past, but I know I got lots of new subscribers, or if you're on the forum and you're new to the forum, you probably haven't seen, when you have a big library of videos, it's hard for people to catch up on all the stuff done. So just straight plaster of Paris, a cheap kind, by DAP, comes I think in a 13-pound bag or 11-pound, I can't remember exactly what it comes in. There are different kinds of plaster. You can get UltraCal or HydroCal are two other kinds that are common for people that do a lot of plaster work like this sort of thing. It's harder. It's a harder sort of a plaster, easier for chiseling, but in my area here, I just can't get my hands on it. It either has to come from Vancouver on the West Coast, or I have to order it from back east, and I just refuse to pay for $30 for a bag of HydroCal or $35 for UltraCal, to have to pay $45 for shipping. It just doesn't make any sense to me, and I just can't bring myself to do it. Call me cheap, but to me, it doesn't make any sense to do that. So we were going to grab some on the coast this year, and we never did make it down to where we wanted to go. So anyway, like I said, plaster of Paris just works fine. Pardon me, a little tickle. So what I did was I just drew with a pencil on the top basically the shape or the length that I wanted to go with the piece. Started off just with some chisels and a hammer. I put little rubber pads underneath the whole piece here just to absorb some of the shock. So you just start off, you're either scraping across the plane with it, or you can use a little hammer and chisel across. It's good to get you going, to get a good edge to see where you want to mark off for your opening. Once you got the opening, there's different tools you can use. Now I know a lot of you don't have tools like this, but I mean, if you don't, you can keep going with the chisel. There's other cheaper tools you can find, like a Dremel with a bit on it. That might take you quite a while. So the one I used first was this air chisel. It's actually quite inexpensive. If you're going to do a lot of stuff like this, you'd buy one. The only problem, I'm just going to warn everybody, it does have a lot of vibration to it, a lot. So this piece I did all outside, because if I didn't work outside, there'd be dust from one end of this place to the other. That's the drawback of plaster. So, of course, when you're working out with dust, make sure you cover up. So anyway, this is good for gouging out big long strips of plaster, and you keep your shop vac beside you. You vacuum out the bits that are coming off and the dust that accumulates. When I got close to the bottom, within a couple of inches to the bottom, I stopped using this just because of the fear of the vibration cracking my whole project. Like, I didn't want to crack the whole log. So after that point, I went to this. It's my air dye. Works great. So I started off with this, pardon me, really aggressive bit right here. Get in there. It doesn't clog up if your stuff's nice and dry. I went around just coring out the inside, rough, vacuum it out, and then you go to these stones. You can get a whole bunch. There's a variety of these you can get, different shapes. So you can see there's ball shapes, so like a little sandstone, and there's a cup shape. They work great, like really for smoothing out any rough spots or what, to get it about 80% of where you want to be with it. So then when you're finished, pardon me. So then when you're finished, you want to start sanding. So I get quite aggressive. I just take off my disc sander, I take a 60 grit off of my, my hand sander, and just get in there by hand and really rough it up. It takes a lot of material off in a hurry on your plaster, which is great. It doesn't take you're not sanding for days. So it's good. So 60 grit, then I'll go to like a 100 grit. These are awesome. You know, the kind with two sides, one's rough and one's fine. They're great for getting in here and smoothing it out in a hurry. So 100, and I'll go right up to a 220. This to get it nice and smooth inside, right? So now I'm where I want. It's been sanded, it's good. I've got a few little blemishes inside, a couple little chisel marks, a couple little pockets, air pockets that were in there. Easy peasy to fix. You can mix yourself up a little plaster of Paris, which isn't the greatest actually, because plaster of Paris likes to seize immediately when you put it onto other plaster. It just absorbs any moisture, and it can be a little difficult. So I've mentioned before, it's easier just to use like sheetrock or drywall mud. Easy alternative. This is a premix ready to go. Or you can use this. I use this quite a bit for lots of my plaster work. I mean, this one has like a 40-minute work time, and in 3-4 hours you can go back. If you put a fan on it, you can go back and you're sanding again. So you can just mix up as much as you need. You don't have to wet down anything before you start. You just patch your little spots, go back, sand it out. I mean, it's made, the sheetrock drywall stuff is made from going plaster to plaster. So it's really good stuff to wear. I highly recommend that instead of mucking just with plaster. So before we go to rubber, so I've sanded it out, you do your little corrections. So tomorrow, what I'll be doing is I'll be sealing it, and it's critical to seal. I would advise you not to use a water-based concrete sealer. I'd use my solvent base is what I use, and 2 coats. And you'll see that your first coat is going to disappear as fast as you're putting it on. It's just going to vanish. It's going to suck right in. But that's good. That's what you want. And then your second coat you can do like an hour later, outside of course, or in a well-ventilated room, or wear a respirator, and put your second coat on. You can even go a third coat. You could do shellac on it as well. You could do a varnish on it, anything to seal it up really well. Because if you go straight to rubber on plaster that's not sealed, your plaster, the moisture in your rubber, your plaster is going to want to grab that right away. So what's happening as you're brushing, you'll actually start pulling it off. The rubber will start peeling back off again, and it's just a disaster. So that's the number one most important thing, is to always, always, always seal your plaster before you go to rubber, right? So critical. You can see I've got another piece here. I've got a couple other pieces I just sealed yesterday. They're ready to go for another applique sort of thing, I think mentioned in one of my last 2 little videos. That's coming up probably next week. That'll be next week's video. But so yeah, this beastie is ready to roll, and I hope you enjoyed the video. And I might add a couple, we'll see, I might add a couple little vignettes on the end of this video of me working outside with this piece here too. Okay gang, we'll see you till next week. Bye bye.